Samuel, my dear, thank you for making the time to speak with me.
Come on, Andy. I've got all eternity. I've always got time for you.
An elder vampire such as I should not need your time. But I have been rather foolish of late, and disappointingly powerless against my own cognitive distortions.
Whoa, Chief, slow down. I can't catch up with all the cognitive distortions you're shooting right now.
I know. I have been neglectful of my own mental health, and that is why I wish to speak to you tonight. Before you came to learn from me, I was the only vampire therapist. But now that you have been trained, I wish to ask for your help.
Me? Andy, you said it yourself. I'm a baby vampire. How am I supposed to be your therapist? Also, ain't it kind of weird to have your own client as a therapist?
To be a therapist is not a position of power over another, my friend. Naturally, I think a different therapist would be preferable, but you are here, and I understand your style. I believe you will be an excellent guide for my thoughts.
Well, if you think it'd be all right, of course I'm here to talk. I've been worried about you.
I am sorry for that. It has just been emotionally difficult to see how my past, much like myself, refuses to be buried. But perhaps my efforts to bury my past have been the problem. I wish to unburden myself to you, Samuel. I promise it will not take 3,000 years. I suppose you should pick what cognitive distortions I am likely to exhibit. I think we both know what my chief distortion is. As reformed vampires, we have similar mindsets.
It's disqualifying the positive. I guess it comes with the territory of being former bad guys.
It shall ever be our crucifix to bear. What other distortions do you think I need help with?
Okay, Andy, I think I'm ready to talk.
Do you mind if we play a game while we speak? Much of what I will recall will be difficult to talk about.
Well, sure thing, Andy. What'd you have in mind?
Let us play a little Settlers of Wallachia.
Sure thing, Chief. Kind of funny how everything we do has to be vampire-themed, but I'm game.
We cannot escape our natures, as Dr. Drain might say. What would you like your first move to be?
I think I'd like to build up my defenses. The best offense is a good defense, as they say.
I am not sure they say that, but very well, my friend. Now then, let me tell you the story of my early days as a vampire. Here, perhaps this will tell you something of my origins. Please be careful with it. It's nearly as old as I am.
Dang, this thing belongs in a museum.
One could argue the same about us, my friend. But this vase has emotional value to me. This poor vampire with a spear in his chest, his name was Machariel. He was my bloodfather, and the love of my short life. He was 6,000 years old when we met. He knew secrets from another age. He taught me how civilization had restrained the human animal. We did not even need to speak. He could communicate poetry with a single glance. This is the night he was killed by the Trojans. They attacked us in our sleep. I woke up to their laughter and his sweet blood splashing across my face.
Shit. Dang, Andy. I can't imagine how traumatized you must have been. Your heart must have been broken to pieces.
No, I did not allow myself to mourn. If I shed a single tear, it would have been my end. The pain I felt was so heartrending. I knew it would be my permanent death.
Chief, that sounds a little extreme. Emotional pain is real pain, but it doesn't kill on its own. I got no doubt that dealing with your partner's death would have hurt for a real long time. But people have been losing their partners since before we had words to speak with, and they all survived that pain.
Yes, I was young, Samuel. Like Edmund, I believed my pain was above all other pain. It is difficult to challenge a young vampire's extreme emotions. I could not face my own sorrow, and so I turned my still heart toward anger and vengeance alone. And my vengeance was mighty indeed. I tortured Mechariel's killers, of course, but this did not cool my blood for even a moment. I was resolved to taint their entire race. I planted a seed of darkness in the Trojan people that would blossom into a corrupted Roman Empire.
Oh, hold your horses there, boss. You saying you caused the fall of the Roman Empire?
Yes, the Trojans made Mechariel bleed, so I ensured that their fields were sown with blood, and all their harvests would taste of death. Their empire would be tainted from the start, built on suffering, and I aimed to ensure they would suffer.
I guess men really always have been thinking about the Roman Empire, but that's a lot to swallow, Chief. I don't know that one man can bring down an empire.
Perhaps, but I can draw a direct link from my actions to the tainted history of Rome. Mythology says that it was Athena who brought down Troy, but it was I. You see, it was I who eliminated the opposition to letting the Trojan horse into the city of Troy. I'd like to show you a painting I commissioned of this event. I think you would appreciate it.
Well, hot dang, that is one beautiful horse.
I thought you would appreciate the craftsmanship. We men of war love our horses.
Hey, I'm a man of peace now, and I love horses even more. What's it say on the side of the horse?
Falladum votum. It means a gift or sacrifice of Pallas.
What's Pallas?
Historians might tell you it is a pseudonym for Athena, and the gift of the Trojan horse was in her name. That was not my meaning. Let me explain. After the fall of Troy, the Trojans were led by a man named Aeneas, though I usually thought of him as Enos.
Real mature, Chief.
Come now, Samuel, I was young. Anyway, Aeneas was the ideal the Trojans wished to live up to. He was extraordinarily handsome, strong, and wise, not a mindless killer like those who killed my Mechariel. But I would reveal this ideal to be false. I knew the mind of Aeneas. He was a Trojan, and like all Trojans, selfish and cruel. I would prove there was nothing redeemable about a Trojan.
Oh, but Chief, before a Trojan's a Trojan, they're a human. Maybe Trojan culture taught some of them to be a certain way, but being Trojan ain't in anyone's blood. Besides, ain't it you who's always reminded me that vampires don't have nationalities?
You are of course correct, my friend. Aeneas was born a human, not a Trojan. But I wished to hurt him and all his people. After the siege of Troy, the Trojans were a landless people. They drifted across the Mediterranean to the great city of Carthage in northern Africa. Carthage was run by Queen Dido, and even then, women proved more stable rulers. Her people were happy and content and did not fear the immigrant Trojans. They welcomed the wayward foreigners and invited them to settle in Carthage. They were offered fields to farm in, protection, and a fair place in the city. Indeed, Dido herself fell deeply in love with Aeneas, and he with her. It seemed the Trojans had found their peace. But for me this was not fair. Why should the Trojans live in peace? Why should they smile when I wept for Mechariel? I believed they should suffer. I made certain that Aeneas and his Trojans would no longer be welcome in Carthage. I seduced pure Aeneas. He was not so pure when I was done with him. Seduction was always a great skill of mine.
I never would have guessed.
But I made sure that Queen Dido saw us. She adored Aeneas, and I broke that poor woman in my lust for vengeance. Aeneas could not face her again, and so set sail with his people away from the land that had so warmly welcomed them. Queen Dido built for herself a mighty pyre, and even from 3 leagues away, Aeneas was forced to see his love burn in the fire of her sorrow. He could not hide his shame from me, nor his tears. To me, they were beautiful.
Holy shit, Chief. I get that hurt people, but dang, you could have turned it down a notch.
Oh, that was not even the end of my vengeance. But first, I believe it is your turn to settle Wallachia. What are you going to do?
Oh, let's buy some of them sexy leather outfits. I might end up needing to go to a party.
You certainly don't want to show up to a vampire party wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Now then, where was I? Ah, yes, the Trojans left Carthage for the northern Mediterranean. In the land we now know as Italy, Aeneas met a noble Greek man named Evander, and to my dismay, they set aside the horrors of the Trojan War and became allies. Evander's people were warring with a local tribe, the Rutulians, led by a bloodthirsty boy named Turnus. In the dark of night, I joined with Turnus. I trained his people in the art of war. I taught Turnus how to fight as a man who fears neither death nor shame. In the ensuing battles, the child of Evander, Pallas, was killed by Turnus, despite Aeneas's protection. Aeneas was enraged that his peace with the noble Greek Evander was threatened, and so, day after day, he slaughtered Rutulians until Turnus's people became afraid and began to turn against their leader. Knowing that Turnus would lose, I convinced him to challenge Aeneas to single combat, a final battle. But Turnus would only lose his life. I was determined that Aeneas and the Trojans would lose their souls. I convinced Turnus to wear the belt of Pallas, the child of Evander he had killed, as a trophy. As I predicted, Aeneas easily defeated Turnus, ending the war against the Rutulians. But as Aeneas extended his hand in mercy, he saw the belt of Pallas, and that mercy melted away. He drove his spear into Turnus's chest, and Rome was so founded, not in mercy, but in blood. So you see, Samuel, I was the cause of Rome's bloodlust. Every cruel emperor, every colonial injustice, even the spectacle of the gladiators, they were my doing.
Oh, but Chief, that's assuming way more power and blame than you can take credit for. You hurt them Trojans, sure enough, in ways they couldn't erase. But you can't suggest that you created the morality of people who weren't even born yet.
I understand this now, but I do not wish to erase the part in Roman history I had. After all, this was only the beginning of my evil deeds against the people who once called themselves Trojans. I am sure you would agree that the things I did to the Trojans were horrific. Because of the loss of my lover, I aimed to taint the soul of an entire people. In the last 200 years, I have done significant acts of good. I have uplifted the poor. I fought the scourge of fascism. I have helped vampires find the peace that was so elusive to me. But the good I do now is washed in the blood of millennia, and all that good shall be lost in time, like drops of blood in the vein.
But Andy, who asked you to compare those evils to the good you do? Is the Andy of today gonna do more of them evils?
He will certainly aim not to.
So why are you cutting him down? Would it be better if he didn't commit acts of good? Do you need to remind him he's evil every 5 minutes? Or is that disqualifying the positive?
You see why I also need a therapist. Knowledge of cognitive distortions does not mean that I am immune to them.
So you've taught me. But I like the Andy I know, so I'll thank you kindly not to be such an asshole to him.
Crimson does say that she likes Imernak to be an asshole-free zone. I would not wish to disappoint her. But regard well, I have claimed all of your souls, and am now the voivode of Wallachia.
Oh, shucks, these German board game rules are so complicated.
And I have had thousands of years of experience in the art of war, my friend. Next time, press your advantage. You may do a little better. But for now, let us go down and party. I am DJing tonight, and it is time to get down and boogie, as the children of the night will say.
Oh, are the mortals still saying that?
I don't actually know, but I am ready to let off some steam. Come, my friend, the night awaits. Hello, Samuel.
Evening, Chief. You doing all right? You sound a little down.
In truth, my friend, I have been dreading this evening. I appreciate your taking the time to point out my cognitive distortions, but there are some elements of my past that are especially painful to sort through.
Hey, we were both bad guys, Andy. But we're not anymore, and that's what matters.
This is true. Cognitive distortions are by nature illogical, but I have you to help me clear them up. You should decide what distortions you'd like to focus on tonight so that we may begin our work.
I think these will suit me fine. Lay it on me, boss.
It is time for me to stop delaying. I suppose you might be able to guess what aspect of my past is giving me such distress.
I know your history of sexual conquests is probably weighing heavy on you. All that meaningless sex has got to take its toll and make you feel hollow.
It does? I think you are mind-reading, my friend.
So, you don't have any regrets about your slutty past?
No, my present is slutty as well. I embrace natural pleasures. I think you are projecting, dear Samuel.
Oh, shucks, I really ain't used to Europe. Chief, I know the pain you're feeling. You can't stop being reminded of what you've lost when reminders are in your own mind. But I'm here for you.
I know you are, but it is still comforting to hear. Thank you, Samuel.
Think nothing of it. I've lost a few horses in my time, and they're all still with me. I know you've lost a hell of a lot more of them than I have. Horses leave hoof prints on our hearts, and every one of them hoof prints is unique. I'm sure you wish you could have given them better lives. But their lives were unique because you were in them. Princess was only princess because she was my princess. Now I'm sure...
Samuel, I was not talking about horses.
Oh, you weren't?
No.
Shucks, must have been something else then. You regret that joke of calling Aeneas anus. Well, that was a little childish, Chief, but you can forgive yourself.
You're not going to let me live that down, are you, Samuel?
You gotta admit, you looking the way you do, no one would think you'd make a joke like that.
Can't a man of refinement make a butt joke from time to time?
Yeah, I guess we can't be too anal about rules of class, huh?
Ha, I see what you did there. But juvenile jokes bring me no distress. I think you know what truly haunts me.
You're thinking about Heinrich Kramer, ain't you?
Yes, my actions 600 years ago bring me no end of shame and regret. I have never truly processed what I did. I have sought to distance myself from Heinrich Kramer, but that is exactly what Edmund Kean tried to do with his past. I am no different from him. I will summon my emotional strength and accept my part in Heinrich's development as a monster. I believe the 1400s were my worst century. I had professionally killed so many by then, and I was so good at it that murder seemed meaningless. I no longer felt that dark adrenaline that accompanies life-taking. I felt nothing. If I no longer felt anything at the taking of a life, did life matter at all? In order to combat this feeling of emptiness, I transitioned from a simple vampire into a far more terrible monster. I became what is known in modern times as a troll. I have observed many trolls throughout history. It is a common fate for those who fail to find purpose. Ironically, it is often those who are most privileged who become agents of cruel chaos.
Oh, like that billionaire fellow who runs all them companies but spends all his time being a low-down varmint online. I'm blanking on his name.
I'm afraid I'm unfamiliar with the man.
I think that'd piss him off more than anything.
It makes sense for a mortal billionaire to act in this way. Being so powerful yet feeling your impotence on a global stage is a strange kind of pain. Heinrich Kramer was such a man. I was doing business in the southern regions of the Holy Roman Empire when I met him in a tavern. He was drunkenly ranting and raving about the sin of Eve, how women were the cause of all evil, that witches surrounded us. He had gathered quite an audience, who delighted in egging him on to sound even more ridiculous. By the end of the night, he was spouting some nonsense about how breasts were chest horns and that all women possessed a sacral hump indicating a vestigial tail.
Wait, what? Was this fella serious?
It was like a stand-up comedy show, but with more vomiting and misquoted Bible verses. But I was very old already. I saw through the humor to the true hatred beneath. I cannot believe I ever saw value in such a fallen one. I ought to be ashamed.
You didn't think I'd miss that should statement just because you said ought instead of should, did you? There's only one man assigning that should, and that's you, Chief. You're the one shoulding all over yourself.
You speak truly. I have conjured up quite the should storm.
Yep, you're shoulding all over the place, but we gotta wipe that up and see things as they are.
The metaphor is getting a little too visceral now. I will continue. Heinrich was already an influential friar in the Dominican order, with ties going all the way up to the Vatican. But his hatred was childish and personal. His persecution of witches failed because he seemed entirely petty. I functioned as his mentor and press relations manager.
Wait, so you were a warrior, an assassin, and a PR guy?
Is it so ridiculous? Assassinations are often public relations moves. Dictators have their critics killed for professional reasons, not just personal ones. Anyway, I turned his rambling manifestos into something more grounded. We made a scholarly appeal to Pope Innocent VIII to condemn witches, and he was only too glad to issue a papal bull.
What's a papal bull?
It's a memo issued by the Pope to alert Christians to new positions or doctrines of the Church. In this papal bull of 1484, the Pope condemned those who consorted with devils, incubi, and succubi, and those who cast spells.
It does sound like a bunch of bull.
You are not the first to think so. This papal bull was largely ignored. Pope Innocent VIII was not a well-regarded pope. At this time in his life, he was a frail old man, mostly surviving on the breast milk of teenaged girls. He was far from a spiritual authority.
Oh, yuck. I'm starting to see where the Puritans came from.
The late 1400s often mirror our current times, I find. Intensely concentrated power does terrible things to men, especially when they feel threatened. Heinrich was intensely disappointed when this papal bull did not result in the widespread persecution of women. I encouraged him to intensify his efforts. Had it not been for my encouragement, perhaps the Inquisitions of the time would never have happened.
I think you're laying too much of the blame on yourself, Chief. Yeah, you played your part in Heinrich's evildoing, but he did too. Maybe if you hadn't encouraged him, someone else would have. Or maybe he didn't even need any help. You can't know.
It is hard to imagine that he would have achieved his goals without me, but perhaps you are right. I cannot know. It is very easy to assign myself all of the blame because I can control my own actions.
Well, that's right. And you can't control Heinrich's actions.
See how the student becomes the master. Yes, you are correct. I could not control Heinrich, but I did help him. It was at this time that I offered Heinrich the chance to dedicate his immortal soul to his dark work by taking it from him. The supreme, delicious irony of welcoming a hateful man of the Church into eternal darkness was too tempting for me. Of course he took my offer. He was all too eager to devote eternity to his hateful work. And just because I thought it would be funny, I told him we needed to have homosexual sex in order for the dark ritual to work. He was so eager to abandon his beliefs to indulge his hatred.
Oh, geez, Chief. You really ain't too picky about who you're getting intimate with.
You are such a sweet blood, Samuel. Sex need not always be about intimacy. In this case, it was the cruel irony that gave me satisfaction. Heinrich took to unlife well. He dedicated himself wholeheartedly to his great book, the Malleus Maleficarum.
Oh, you mentioned that before. Well, what was in this book?
Here, take a look. I have an old copy. This is a manual of sorts on how to identify, persecute, and kill witches. It was a work of dark fantasy garbage, unworthy of any respect.
Geez, Andy. I feel like you ought to burn this thing. Smells like brimstone and bad news.
No, Samuel. If the past does not teach us, we will be doomed to repeat it. I kept it to remind me of just how far I had once fallen. I gave him the brilliant idea of attaching Pope Innocent's papal bull to this work in order to give it legitimacy. We also fabricated an endorsement from the University of Cologne. Fact-checking was so slow back then that it would take decades to challenge the legitimacy of such an endorsement.
Sounds like an election debate.
You see, my friend, mortals are eager to follow instructions. Church authorities were all too willing to enforce these rules. And so Heinrich became a superstar influencer. His works spread across Europe, and witchcraft, once a superstitious joke, became a very real problem to the public. This climate of persecution spread throughout the Holy Roman Empire, and would later fuel witch hunts even in your own country. But even this systemic persecution was not enough to sustain me. Acceptance of radical ideas has a way of normalizing the radical, and I soon became bored of Heinrich.
Wait, you helped make a witch hunting manual popular throughout Europe, and then you got bored.
A troll requires fuel to feel they matter. If a troll ceases to be radical to others, they are beings without purpose. I told Heinrich as much when I dumped him. I said that he bored me. He was a mere tool to be used.
Oh, dang, Chief. You didn't think much of Heinrich after all, did you?
Medi spoke of mortals as insects. I felt much the same way. When you are more than 1,000 years old, it is easy to fall into such thought patterns. Legitimizing witchcraft was a significant accomplishment, to be sure, but its fulfillment left me feeling empty. When the clerical authorities began persecuting witches on their own, I felt rather left out. I wanted their persecution to happen because of me.
But Andy, the actions of others weren't just because of you. They got that dirty old manual you helped write, but it was up to them to decide to listen to it.
You speak truly, my friend. I wish you had been around back then to speak with me. The existential angst of a very old vampire is hard to communicate. I just wanted to feel that I mattered somehow. By 1492, I had to go somewhere where I feel more effective as an agent of chaos. And there was no better place to go than Spain, specifically Granada.
Well, why Spain?
Spain in 1492 was a mess. For more than 260 years, Granada had been a center of learning. The Muslim Nasrid dynasty ruled, but Jews and Christians were allowed to practice their religion and even rose to high positions in society. But when Ferdinand and Isabel of Castile arrived with the Spanish Inquisition, it was incompatible with the harmony that defined Granada. I smelled blood, for lack of a more apt phrase. My instincts were correct. I arrived in Granada in April. Though the stones were still stained red, its conquerors were hungrier for blood than I was. Ferdinand and Isabella had just sanctioned Christopher Columbus's trip westward in search of treasures to fund their conquests.
Hey, I know this one. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
I have heard this poem as well, but it did something quite terrible. Do you know what it is?
I'm pretty sure the Native Americans and Columbus weren't pals.
Indeed, Columbus brought several of them back to Spain as slaves. I doubt the few that survived were fans of his. The journey of Columbus was not a noble journey, but a savvy and cruel move by Ferdinand and Isabella to solidify their tenuous position as rulers of a unified Catholic Spain. If I could find my way into their court, I could commit such devilry. It would not be easy for a dark-skinned demon like me to worm myself into their graces, but I found a way.
Well, let me guess. You seduced Ferdinand, or Isabella.
Samuel, I am hurt. You think I just fucked my way through history, don't you?
Oh, shucks, Chief. I didn't mean nothing by it. I just saw a running theme and thought...
Well, you were right. I seduced Isabella of Castile's chief advisor. They called her La Latina. What a woman. Here, I have a painting of her. Her name was Beatriz Galindo. She was one of the most learned mortals I have ever met, if not the most. This painting does not capture her essence well, but she was also devilishly attractive. There is nothing sexier than an inquiring mind, and Beatriz, she was one of the sexiest women I have ever known.
You sound a little smitten there, Chief. Better not let Crimson hear.
She knows about Beatriz. Not everything, of course. She doesn't need to hear the most intimate details. But, seeing as you are acting in the capacity of my therapist, I can tell you, yes? She used to do this one thing with her finger.
I ain't a Puritan. I just think all this stuff should maybe be done behind closed doors.
I'm sorry, my dear. I don't wish to go too far, but I will still unburden myself. I believe I did Beatriz great harm. She was newly married when I met her in Granada. Her husband was a man named Francisco Ramirez de Madrid. As his name implies, he was of Madrid, meaning that his lovely wife was often left alone in Granada. It took me an entire month to get her into bed, perhaps the longest courtship of my entire life.
Shucks, for an immortal being, you don't take your time much, do you?
I don't usually have to try, but Beatriz was a woman of principle. She was not ready to cheat on her husband or her holy vows. She did not share her body with me immediately, but in her mind, the deed had been done 1,000 times already from the first day we met. I knew her by reputation before I met her, and I knew the way into her underclothes. It was through Latin. Other than myself, she was perhaps the global authority on Latin, largely an unspoken language at the time. I quoted Virgil to her, the story of my old nemesis, Aenos.
You mean Aeneas, right?
What did I say?
You definitely said anus.
Oh, my mistake. Anyway, I knew I would be her match in Latin, so I told her, Nunc scio quid sit amor. Now I know what love is. She admonished me for my forwardness, but did so with a smile that she could not hide from me. With her husband in Madrid, I spent the warm Spanish evenings with her, drinking her blood and sharing thoughts of terrifying intimacy.
Meaning you got up to a lot of kinky stuff.
Oh, the kinkiest. We probed each other so deeply. Do you know what we did?
I can guess.
We discussed Aristotle.
Oh, okay, maybe I can't guess.
You cannot know true intimacy until you have delved deeply into Aristotelian logic, biology, and virtues with another. But Samuel, I used her. Even with the bond we formed, a bond that few couples on this earth could ever achieve, I used her. Through her influence, I was able to embed myself into the Spanish court. I introduced Ferdinand and Isabella to the Malleus Maleficarum. They adored it, of course. They loved blood as much as I did.
So you were feeding poison to a couple of already rabid dogs?
Yes, it inspired their brutal actions against the conquered Muslims and Jews, which delighted me in this foolish troll era of mine. After evenings discussing mystic ancient virtues with Beatriz, this was a great betrayal. I deserved to suffer for helping Heinrich, and I deserved to suffer for using Beatriz. I think she was trying to save me through our conversation, Samuel. I might have charmed her with my voice and my words, but she knew who I was. Have you read much about Aristotelian ethics?
We didn't discuss a lot of Aristotle out on the range.
I think he will not be so alien to you. He described a concept known as the virtuous mean. It is not so different from the middle path we speak of so often. Between purposelessness and overambition, there is fair ambition. Between shyness and shamelessness, there is modesty.
Reminds me a lot of Isabella d'Este and Dr. Drain.
Exactly. We cannot sustain being individuals of pure vice or pure virtue. There is no peace in such ambition. But I could not hear her wisdom. I was 2,500 years old. Who was immortal to talk to me about ethics and virtue?
I reckon you know now you were being always right. Mortals have got a heck of a lot to teach us. It sounds like Beatriz had a real good head on her shoulders, like them transcendentalists I was lucky enough to get to know. I think mortals are better at asking themselves immortal questions than we are.
You are right about that. It seems that we immortals are excellent at delaying those questions, sometimes for millennia. Even at 3,000, I am certainly not always right, as you have proven to me several times over.
Oh, shucks.
Shall we skip the part where you disqualify the positive, my dear?
All right, just this once.
It is simply difficult to reconcile my disappointment with myself, Samuel. That I helped the evil and used the virtuous. Once I had helped to fuel the bloody ambitions of Ferdinand and Isabella, I abandoned Beatrice. It is a dark thing indeed to live to be a troll. There is no fulfillment in such a life, only pain. A troll such as I was is a societal toxin. We break down the social contract and reduce humanity to a bestial state. Alas, I believe I was a far more successful troll than I have been a sincere human being. I used Heinrich and Beatrice more effectively than I have ever helped kindly vampires.
Andy, you're disqualifying the positive again. Whatever troll you were in the past, comparing him to the Andy of today is as useful as milking a bull. Well, actually, it might make the bull happy, but we ain't going to talk about that. Point is, if we're talking about the good you do now, what do your troll days have to do with anything? You're being a real Count Gloomula if you're taking something good and ruining it for no reason.
Count Gloomula? I know of no such man.
I made him up, but he's just who you're being when you're knocking yourself down.
You are correct, Samuel. May that Andromachos remain buried. I will not forget him, but not so that I might torture myself, but to remember how far I have come. I must say, I am feeling much less burdened having spoken with you, my friend. I feel as though I am in bat form already, with the wind beneath my wings.
I'm glad to hear that, Andy. I don't want you weighed down.
Would you like to go out for a night fly with me, my friend?
That sounds like a mighty fine idea.
Then let us go. The moon is high and the night awaits.
Hey, Andy, you ready for our therapy sesh, partner? Hey there, you ain't Andy. Panoptabella, what are you doing here?
I was looking for the bathroom.
Well, this ain't the bathroom.
I can see that. I'll go then.
Hey, Chief, what's going on?
Panoptabella and I were simply having an exchange.
In exchange of what?
Samuel, my dear, you do not need to know everything. It is not my business to share. We are here for my therapy session, are we not?
Yeah, that's right. How are you doing, boss?
In truth, I feel much improved, my friend. I believe unburdening myself to you has been most helpful. My lightening of spirit comes with its own distortions, however. Which would you like to focus on tonight?
I think I've got what I need to handle an ancient vampire. Go on, Chief. What's been on your mind?
The last century has been a bit isolating. Other elder vampires think themselves above self-improvement, so we have little to speak of.
Well, I guess that ain't no surprise. New ways of thinking don't usually come out of retirement communities.
Indeed, we elderly often prefer to sing praises to old glories, but there is no glory in my past, only death.
I want to stop you there, Chief. There is no glory in my past, only death. You're 3,000 years old. Can you really say you got nothing to be proud of in that time?
I am not proud to be an effective killer, my friend.
I just have trouble believing all you did was kill and sleep for 3,000 years.
That is fair. I have met many fascinating people and seen many forgotten wonders.
See, there you go. Don't go tossing out the blood with the blood bag.
You are correct. Against my own wisdom, I hope to erase the parts of my unlife that bring me shame.
Well, it's like you told me. Everyone's got cognitive distortions, and we ain't ever gonna get over them.
Too true. I must accept the evil so that I can appreciate the good. I confess I often wish to give myself a pass, because in hindsight my evil was so pointless. Have you ever heard the phrase, the banality of evil?
Oh, no, but I can guess what it means. Well, evil is pathetic. I mean, look at me. I was an evil bastard, but what I was deep down was a scared, pathetic little boy.
No, Samuel, do not label your inner child as pathetic. A child is a child, and a child's needs are not pathetic. They simply are. Banality is something different. Historian Hannah Arendt coined this phrase to describe the actions of some Nazi leaders. In Western tradition, when we think of evil, we imagine powerful creatures of darkness intent on hurting others. Even in this understanding, evil has no ideology. It is, as you say, dumb. And when we perceive evil as dumb, it is tempting to simply dismiss it. If I live in a life that is no longer evil, it does not feel right to be judged by the centuries I spent in dumbness.
I know it doesn't feel right, Chief. I know you ain't that man anymore, and I get how it doesn't seem fair to be judged. But the universe doesn't care how dumb you were. It ain't considering you, just like you didn't consider the folk you hurt.
Yes, I am exhibiting a fairness fallacy, I know. Perhaps it can be considered evil for me to wish my history to be expunged.
Now don't go no Nosferatu thinking, boss. It ain't all or nothing. You ain't evil Andy or good Andy. You're the whole Andy.
I understand, and I do value my dark history, even if I find it shameful. Indeed, it was the realization of the banality of evil that made me question it.
Well, how's that?
Well, you and I know what effective killers we are. There is no mortal that would dare stand against us. We are physically superhuman, but are we truly greater beings than mortals? How many people do you think I have killed, Samuel?
Well, you being 3,000 years old and all, I bet you've killed. You must have killed a few thousand mortals.
No, my friend. Even if I had sought to be a more ethical vampire, I have lived for more than 1,000,000 nights. I have killed far more than a few thousand mortals. The truth is, I have no idea how many people I have killed. I was certain, however, that I was the dominant force of death in the world. But in the 20th century, humanity showed me that I was far from superhuman. If I thought I was detached from the value of life, World War I showed me I was not special in this.
Oh, yeah. I kind of missed both of the world wars. I was busy walking at that time.
They were terrible, Samuel. Mass death events have happened before. The Napoleonic Wars, the Taiping Rebellion, and even older wars killed millions. But the industrialization of war turned corpses into mere numbers. Humanity could kill its enemies without ever seeing their faces. I was there on the Western Front. I saw mortars and mustard gas used indiscriminately, men ripped to unidentifiable shreds. Day after day, month after month, the bodies filled mass graves, each death contributing to no ultimate goal. Back then, I was a creature who saw death as glorious. I thought that mortals were food, owed to me because I was greater than they. This casual mass murder showed me that I was not above my humanity. Murder was humanity. I'm afraid, Samuel, that I quite lost my appetite for blood. I did not think such a thing was possible for a vampire.
Dang, you must have been pretty depressed.
You could say that. I was disgusted. With myself. With humanity. Certainly with my own humanity. One night, standing on a North Sea beach, utterly lost, I walked into the sea. Water filled my lungs, but I did not die. I kept walking into the cold gloom, to whatever fate would befall me.
What were you thinking in that moment?
I was not. Without a purpose, all I had was walking. That was all that mattered.
That actually does make a lot of sense, I reckon. I did much the same thing.
I thought you would understand. Yes, I did not walk for a purpose. Perhaps I was walking to find a purpose.
So, what happened?
The light of moon and sun faded away. I saw things in the darkness, flashes of nightmares, giant eyes peering at me in the gloom. I felt the heat of volcanic plumes, saw explosions of strange life in the corpses of dead whales. Predators like myself abound in the deep places of the world. These Ghosts in the darkness consumed one another, horrors feeding upon horrors. As I walked further still, I came upon the wreckage of a great ship, littered with material reminders of the mortals who once walked its decks. I will never forget the experience of seeing this symbol of humanity's power over nature decaying in the abyss. I had to sketch the great ship as soon as I could. It was named the Titanic.
The Titanic? I remember that story. John Muir would say it was a symbol of man's hubris. He could be a grumpy old cuss sometimes.
I saw it more as a symbol of nature's ignorance of humanity's hubris. The creatures of the cold deep paid it no mind, ignorant of the death all around them. I think it was then that I finally understood. Death, as a state of nature, has no meaning. Death only has whatever meaning we give it, and my death had none.
That seems a little cut and dry to me. Andy ain't the only one assigning meaning to death.
Death only has whatever meaning we give it, and my death had none.
That seems a little cut and dry to me.
Death only has whatever meaning we give it, and my death had none.
You know, I'm pretty sure Eddie Keene said exactly the same thing.
I do not deny it. Edmund was in some ways correct. If we do not give our unlives meaning, do they have meaning?
That's still Nosferatu thinking and disqualifying the positive. You ain't the only one that gets to define the meaning of life and death. Death doesn't erase the memory of a person, just the body.
I suppose one could say their hearts will go on.
I hope you ain't gonna sing it.
Don't worry, my friend. I think we all heard that song a little too much. But you are right. I was so sure I understood death, but I was only beginning to understand mortality.
I get it. There's a reason we're in the same business, I reckon.
Your reckoning is well perceived, and I am grateful that I had my own reckoning. As I watched the creatures of the deep swimming among the wreckage of the great ship, I realized how small my life truly was. I had wondered for many centuries what it would be like to venture into space. Into the great ocean, that need was satisfied. For once, I felt small, powerless, a small spark of life in the void. All my unlife was a primal scream. I am here, I matter. But I finally understood that I could never be heard.
I think I get what you're saying, Andy. The deep woods gave me the same experience of feeling small and insignificant. But we can't help but matter, and it's a control fallacy to say we don't. Maybe we don't get heard in the same way we want to be heard, but that we can't control. But the sea knew you were there, just like the woods knew I was there.
I must admit, Samuel, I am a bit envious of your wisdom at such a young age.
Oh, shucks, I ain't wise. I'm just too much of a fool to know I shouldn't assume too much.
Come now, Samuel, this is my session. You can disqualify the positive later.
Fair enough.
I will say it was a terrifying experience, but one that I am unendingly grateful for. And it was more achievable than going to space.
Vampires in space. I guess there's no real reason why we shouldn't go out there. We got time for long travel. Maybe we should take a trip to Mars sometime.
Martian vampires? It's a little silly, Samuel.
Take me to your bleeder.
Oh, Samuel, that was truly terrible. And I adore you for it. Perhaps the day will come when we do visit Mars. But I am content to stay here. There is much to discover about our existence on Earth. After this dark journey, I walked back across the Atlantic, sustained with fish blood and a new will to understand myself. My timing could not have been better, because a new form of science was just coming into prominence. Psychology, the study of the self.
Well, when was this?
Around 1920. I was not the only human being to question humanity's choices after the Great War. Indeed, if humanity did not question itself after such horrors, this would be a condemned world.
You've been around a long time, right? You've seen oppression and violence like I couldn't imagine. But somehow, every time folks get knocked down, they dust themselves off again. I think you're doing a little catastrophizing, boss. Humanity ain't gonna die out so easily.
Perhaps not. I believe the mortals are even more stubborn than we are. The fear of death makes them cling to life.
It's too bad everyone can't just become vampires. It'd solve a lot of problems.
I think we have enough work on our hands already, my friend. But where was I? Oh, yes. It was my questioning of the self that brought me to this place. Psychology was born right here in Leipzig.
No shit.
None at all, my friend. A man named Wilhelm Wundt lived just down the street. He developed a method where we describe our own thoughts and sensations.
Well, that sounds mighty familiar.
Yes, the hints of cognitive distortions were present already. I read his works voraciously. I was obsessed with the study of the self. I became interested in my own feelings. Why did I rage for so long? What did it feel like physically? And I realized that my prevailing feeling was always fear. Like Edmund, I was a coward. Oh dear, the similarities are piling up. Why was I not interested in myself for nearly 3,000 years? I should have shed my ignorance long before. But I did develop an obsession with knowing myself, and it took me to some very awkward places.
All right, Chief, I'm ready. I ain't afraid of sex, so you can talk to me.
I suppose it was about sex.
Here we go.
This is when I began my studies with Sigmund Freud. I spent much time with him. He shared this obsession with understanding the self. We analyzed each other, which helped us to analyze ourselves. We hid nothing. We knew that we would understand the truth if we laid it bare. The bearing of truth in this case was difficult. I horrified him, I believe.
I don't think anyone could read Sigmund Freud's mind, but he didn't seem afraid to share.
The bearing of truth in this case was difficult. I horrified him, I believe.
I don't think anyone could read
The bearing of truth in...
I don't think anyone could read...
The bearing...
Andy, you can't know what Sigmund Freud was thinking. I know you've done some blood-curdling stuff like I have. If he didn't tell you he was horrified, it's only your guessing.
I know this is true logically, but I believe we both opened certain boxes that did not need opening.
You don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
Take a look at this picture. What is your impression of this woman?
Well, she knows how to accessorize, that's for sure. Can't go wrong with a good hat.
I'm not much of a hat man myself.
I suppose that perfect hair ain't no accident.
I allow myself a little vanity. This woman was most beloved by Sigmund. She was his mother. He would show me this very picture and say, Andromachos, if she were your mother, you would want to fuck her too.
I don't use this phrase often for obvious reasons, but what in the Sam hell?
He could not imagine why anyone else would feel differently. Of course, I overshared with him as well. I do not think my recounting of the convent of San Sisto orgy of 1417 helped us to gain a greater sense of self-awareness. Though I always found it humorously ironic the way the nuns still cried out to God.
Boy, you really like a little novelty in the bedroom, don't you?
Oh, Samuel, you are such a millennial.
I'm way too old to be a millennial, Andy.
I mean to say that you were born in the last millennium.
You know, you're not my daddy.
No, I am not, though perhaps I joke like one. But Sigmund had made a grave mistake in our explorations of the self, and in doing so, cast doubt on the truly groundbreaking work we did. He eventually died, as mortals do, but my lust for understanding the self was not quenched. I became interested in the philosophy of those of my lifetime, and the philosophy of the modern era. It was like charting a map through humanity. It was invigorating. I felt alive. This feeling showed me that I was on the right path.
That sounds pretty thrilling, but I think we got to be careful with this kind of thinking. What if, say, Dr. Drain had let Lord Lourdes take over? Being Lord Lourdes felt good for the doc, but feeling good didn't make it good.
You are right to advise caution. A healthy obsession is still an obsession after all. Crimson believes I have a healthy obsession with moisturizer, and she may be correct. The thinkers whose works I read all had the same obsession I did. They wanted to unlock the formula of humanity. That was my true aim as well. I thought that my immortality made me the ideal student of the self. I had time to question and explore, but I did not account for the fact that the act of questioning made me grow and change myself. I am no longer the man I was yesterday, and tomorrow I shall be someone new. I have become aware of ways in which I could be more mindful, more kind, more fashionable even. I chase the truth, Samuel, and I chase the good. It is a shame that I can only chase them, never catch them.
You ain't ever gonna be perfect, Chief. Neither am I. You're right. The more aware we are, the more them goalposts are gonna keep moving. We can always be better. But I think you're disqualifying the positive of being good enough. You're trying, Andy, every day. I think that's the battle won right there. You ain't gonna slip now. 4,000-year-old Andy is gonna be a force of good to be reckoned with.
I know. It reminds me of a pearl of wisdom Marcus Aurelius gave me that I could not yet understand. He said, "Waste no time in arguing what a good person should be. Be one." I take these words to heart now, but it is hard to not have deep regrets.
I think you know how to address them regrets there, Andy.
Are you going to do the horse thing? I would prefer you didn't.
No, I ain't gonna do the horse thing.
I am relieved. But yes, you know what I need, and I gratefully accept it.
Andy, let's accept all the dark deeds you done. Let's accept that it took you a long time to change. Ain't no getting around that. It's time to show a little compassion. You're doing your best. You're a better person for all the work you done. You, my friend, are good enough.
Good enough. I suppose I am.
Would you like a hug there, boss?
I would love a hug, my friend.